Hello, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about promoting student mental health and well being during the return to school. These are certainly unusual and uncertain times in schools and elsewhere. So, we want to be as prepared as we can and to help our students to feel safe and cared for as we start this very unique school year. We've invited our whole staff to join the sessions today because any one of you may be the one who a student chooses when they are needing a helping hand. We want to equip each of you to be able to help in supporting a mentally healthy return to school. Hello, okay, so that was a pretty powerful video. I love that video. Um, so moving on to the rest of our agenda, we have 2 hours today and we'll be covering some core concepts in mental health, and we'll outline the role of classroom educators and other school staff in supporting student well-being as we all return to school. It's helpful to have this shared information and shared understanding because it'll help us all feel equipped to support students in a collective and collaborative way as they start the school year in person or remotely. We're going to be sharing a lot of tools and resources which you can use right away, but can also support you in whatever way works for you in the classroom. Although we know it's mandatory for us to implement well-being within the context of the classroom as directed by the ministry, there will be tools that you can embed into your regular classroom experiences, as well as a 10-day return to school planner with all things planned out already for you, so you can choose the way that best works for you. As I said, we're going to be providing a variety of resources, and I'll make sure that you have a simple place to access those at the end of this presentation. You can adapt this information and implement it for both in-person and virtual classrooms. And remember, no one has the same style. All of us are different in our style as educators and supporters of students, but we all need to figure out where this important work can fit in our classroom. One of the reasons we're here today is because at Upper Grand, we have a very strong commitment to enhance and protect student mental health as we return to school. It is the foundation for student success during this challenging times. Students can only feel ready to engage and learn when they feel mentally well and are warmly welcomed back to class. Above all, students need to feel safe, confident, included, and cared for, whether they're in attendance at school in person or remotely over the course of the next months. If you take any high-level messages away from these 2 hours, here are some of the key ones. We'll get lots more details on them, but these are the things I ultimately hope to leave you with. Mental health and well-being is a key priority for our board and for your school. Students will return with a range of experiences, feelings, and needs. And schools are an excellent place to promote and protect student mental health, and never more than now. We do have strong foundations and resources to build on, and we can use this moment in time to better integrate learning, equity, and wellness beyond that which we already do. We need to continue to work together and support one another through this very challenging time. Before we describe your role, we want to pause for a little bit of a reflection. Look at this image. We talk a lot about throughout today about the importance of your own self-care and well-being, so that you'll have the energy and capacity to help students through these challenging days and weeks. So as you look at this image, think about it and reflect on the quote and consider how it's true in your own life. Parents and teachers who take care of themselves are better able to take care of their children and students. If you choose to pause for a few minutes or just quietly reflect on this, how is this true for you? How does this support you when you take care of yourself and parents take care of themselves? And how does it support our students? It's really important to remember that you are important in this. We can't support our children and our students unless you as our staff are supported. This has been difficult for all of us, and like students, many staff members have experienced hardship, worry, disruptions, and loss over the past several months. Coming back to school holds many emotions for all of us. We all have a COVID story. We also know that many staff will often delay or deny their own responses and experiences in order to be there for their students and families. It's your natural inclination for many of you to put things aside so you can do the best you can for the students you support and serve. But before we get into the support of our students, we do need to take a moment to process what has happened and to check in with one another. So take a minute. You can pause and leave it on this slide, or you can just do this silently. Consider your COVID story. Jot down or talk about 3 words you would use to describe your experience. What has helped you most to get through these times? Jot down a couple thoughts on that. Again, feel free to pause if I'm going too fast. Okay, now, what are you most apprehensive about the return to school? You don't have to share this with anybody, it could just be for you, but really and truly think about what you're most apprehensive about. And now I want you to think about what you're most looking forward to for the return to school. What's really exciting you? And finally, although it has also been labeled as number 1 IC, which is fairly important because what is your fondest wish for our students? No matter what our role, we all have competing demands on our energy, and we need to practice self care, kindness, and patience with ourselves and with our colleagues as much as we do in our roles as teachers, educators, and student support staff. This is the time to try some new self care activities, or just make sure you find the time to do the things that take care of you. Check in on your own wellness and reach out for support from time to time. Check out with your colleagues. Remember, as much as we're there to support our students, we are also modeling self care wellness for our students through how we are supporting ourselves. They are watching and they can learn a lot from you. This will be a printout at the end of the session, and it is just some different ways for different varying amounts of time, depending on how much you have, that you can look at how you might cultivate some calm and self care for yourself as educators and student support folks. Again, this will be made available at the end of the presentation. In thinking about planning for the return to school, it's important to know that you are supported by a thoughtful, systematic approach to promoting student mental health and responding to student problems in this area. And that as an educator, you are part of something that stretches across this province. None of us is alone. We all contribute and play our part in ensuring that students have a great start to the school year in spite of the difficult circumstances we find ourselves in. From provincial directions to UGDSB mental health and well-being strategy to school-based wellness plans, you are a part of a larger circle of support, and you are not alone. So let's think about the basics. What do all students need? This is what all students, whether they have a mental health issue, whether they have strong wellness or less wellness, whether whatever their COVID story has been, everybody will benefit from a warm welcome, a smile, a connection to a caring adult every day, a chance to learn and a safe place to risk, and someone who notices when something is wrong, someone who reaches out when they notice, and someone who listens and tries to find help for them. Basically, all students need you, someone who believes in them and instills hope. If you want to pause on this slide, you can take some time either to reflect quietly, to reflect in small groups, or to reflect with your whole team, depending on the setup that you're in while you're watching this presentation. But share some thoughts or think for yourself about the information that's been shared to this point. What have you learned, or what has piqued your interest? Um, what do you think is already something that you can take away from what you've heard so far and just the beginning of this presentation? So let's talk now about what the role is for schools in supporting mental health and well-being. The main role of schools when it comes to student mental health is to help enhance wellness for all students through a welcoming school environment, an inclusive style of instruction, and promotion of social emotional learning across the board and integrated within all classes. At the heart, as noted in the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum Framework, we're trying to help students to have hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose through our daily relationships and learning. It's also important for educators and school staff to notice, prevent, connect, and support when we notice mental health problems that arise at the school level. We know that according to the Ontario Child Health Study of 2014, about 26 to 34% of children and youth with a mental health need saw a mental health provider. We also know that schools can be a great environment and often a common setting for mental health related contacts, connections, and pathways, not to mention the important role of educators and classroom staff and school staff in noticing and identifying when there are concerns or warning signs and having the tools that they need to address that. So let's look at this model, which you may have seen in presentations over the last several years. It's called the Aligned and Integrated Model, or the AIM model. This is how we talk about a lot of things, and it really fits well with our Learning for All understandings from that document. Basically, what we're looking at is the green is what we do for all students, and then the blue is what some students will need, and only a few students will need the purple. As classroom teachers and at the board in general, much of our work is done in the green section. Whatever we do in this section, we can do in a way that supports all of these aspects for all students, whether they have a mental health concern, whether they have strong or weak wellness and well-being. It does not matter. All students will benefit from the work that you do as teachers in these green areas. We can all teach well-being and therefore create a mentally healthy classroom space for all. We do this through welcoming, including, understanding, promoting, and partnering. So what does this look like in an everyday classroom life? Let's just go over this a little bit because it's so important and it's such a core of what you do as teachers in classrooms. We welcome. So we look at the social and physical environments and we think about, okay, what does a social and physical environment look like if it is welcoming? Well, it looks like a physically safe space that's following guidelines, emotionally safe and inviting. Clear and consistent expectations for behavior is really important and sometimes can be overlooked. Clearly responding to and addressing to incidents of bullying. And a welcoming environment is one that recognizes meaningfully and embraces meaningfully diverse identities into the space. So you can think about, what do you do in your classroom to create welcome social and physical environments? Is there anything you can enhance or do differently to do that now during these difficult times? The next part of the green part of our AIM model is mental health literacy. So what does it look like if we truly understand and have mental health literacy? It looks like staff having knowledge and confidence about their role and how they can support mental health without becoming a mental health professional. School staff are able to use strategies for promoting mental health every day as a part of school life. I know at Upper Grand we do this frequently. Lots of classrooms use curriculum that's embedded in well-being. And we're going to be going over Some great tools that can be used as we are being directed to embed well-being at the beginning of the school year this year by the ministry. This is a really important one, and lots of tools are going to be made available to you to support this. This also looks like building positive relationships, and we do this through understanding and knowing who our students are. And we know that's working when students are turning to teachers or adults when they're needing help. And when they do turn to you, understanding is also knowing how you can make those connections for them to move on to the next support or the next tier. Including is all about student engagement and belonging. So what does it look like? It looks like a recognition of the inequities and injustices that were amplified during COVID-19. It looks like efforts being made to ensure that all students feel included and cared for. It's an opportunity in classrooms to have student voice and leadership. It shows up when students are eager to come to school and participate in classroom activities, because when you feel like you belong, you feel like you have something to contribute. And it is really important in reducing stigma and promoting positive mental health to allow those with lived experiences to be included and to participate and to be heard and recognized. So what do you typically do around inclusion in your classroom? What does that usually look like for you? And when you're thinking of that, what can you maybe enhance or change or bring in new that might help you in this area in our current situation to enhance engagement and belonging? When we talk about promote, we think about curriculum, teaching, and learning. So what does that look like? It looks like a classroom that has social emotional learning as a focus for classroom instruction, such as identifying and managing emotions, or identify lagging skills and working on building those skills. It's just a part of school life. It looks like students learning about mental health self-care, stigma reduction, how to find help, etc. It looks like just reinforcing every day the mentally healthy habits that we all are engaging in, or we all aspire to engage in, or we want to teach our kids about as a part of the everyday school life. And there's a common language that we use as educators in schools that is consistently strength-based and non-stigmatizing. And that means we're not throwing out words without thinking of their deeper meaning, and we're being careful about the words we're choosing. So again, think about how you've done this in your classrooms in the past. What has worked, and what have you really enjoyed, and what do you generally want to continue, and what might you do a little bit differently given our current environment, or what might you enhance or add in or do differently to support this year. And finally, partner. Partnering with home, school, and communities is key to the success of our students. What it looks like is when families are comfortable to talk with school staff about their concerns. When we work collaboratively with families to support the learning for our students, as well as mental health, and ensuring that we're using consistent plans between home and school when possible and appropriate. Partnering looks like students who requiring specialized mental health services are able to find that and access that through the mobilization of supports and referrals from school staff. And it looks like not just a referral, but all the support that you put in before the referral, all the continued connection during the support that's being received, and the welcoming back in a really intentional way from that support or service. So again, I say, how have you been doing this in your classrooms, in your jobs, in your roles? What has worked for you in building and fostering strong home and school and community partnerships? What do you think might be highlighted or different or more important or less important, or that you might focus on differently coming into this school year in our unique situation? I'll end this session with the quote: "It is possible to prepare for the future without knowing what it will be. The primary way to prepare for the unknown is to attend to the quality of our relationships, to how well we know and trust one another. We are all, in many ways, journeying into the unknown together. We must remember that we're in it together. Again, feel free to pause on this slide and take some time to have a personal reflection or a small group or group discussion about what we've heard to this point, and maybe just highlight what's really sticking out for you, what you are really holding on to, and what's really feels important to you, and how this relates to the work that you're doing, the very important work that you're doing. We know, and I said earlier when we were talking about taking care of yourselves, that we all have unique COVID-19 stories. Some students, like ourselves, will have experienced significant loss and grief during the pandemic to date. And for others, inequities and hardships will have created a daily strain. For others, instances of racism and violence will have shaken them in immeasurable ways, layering on to the overwhelming nature of the global pandemic. Others may be coming back with a tremendous fear of giving COVID to a vulnerable family or community member. And many will have made their way through with highs and lows, but will be returning to school excited for the comfort of school routines and seeing familiar faces. And students, like all of these, will be gathering in your classroom, and it's important we hold all of these stories and make no assumptions about what anyone is carrying. We need to do this through a centering and a balance and a pivot point of equity. We need to think about all the diverse experiences and understand them as diverse. We need to see the intersection between what we're learning and equity and mental health, and that has never been more important than it is now. We need to check our own privilege constantly and educate ourselves and be willing to learn and explore and hear new things. And we need to do this all in a leadership way with compassion, humility, and authenticity as the people who are modeling for our students. I can't say that enough. As caring adults in a student's life, your words and actions matter. What you say and do matter. We need to lead this way. Some students will need more of our help, depending on the story they're bringing with them in their backpack. All the students need to be heard. So we wonder then, how can we create a sense of belonging and human connection for students in the time of physical distancing and facial coverings? How can you build trust and strengthen relationships with students, particularly those who've been impacted so significantly by systemic racism? How can I use this crisis, this situation, to support students to become better problem solvers and to explore issues of power and think critically about the world we live in? You want to be able to plan the time so students who need the most care and connection and scaffolding are able to receive it. So let's think for a minute about this and what that might look like. Just as there's a tapestry of stories, there's a continuum of emotions that students may be coming to school with. We can start by remembering the mental health continuum, that it's not just healthy or unhealthy, that there's a mix of mental health and well-being for each person's unique situation. You can now consider the range of emotions a student might be feeling right now, from wellness to illness, and you might reflect on yourself in this as well. Emotions like optimism, contentment, and gratitude might well be present, but we might also see apprehension, loneliness, fear and worry, or anger, irritability, especially as the weeks pass on. And sometimes grief and loss and hopelessness and depression or a depressed mood is present. But it isn't that some students are completely optimistic while others are completely in despair. It isn't likely in a linear way as we're looking at it right now for students, in as much as it's not like this for us. Students are definitely going to be experiencing a range of emotions, but it might look more like this. Instead of linear, Our emotions tumble around and they change across the days and the moments depending on how things are going internally and externally. So, what are we talking about? What's the takeaway? Don't speak in extremes. Don't don't say don't model that everything is really upsetting and difficult. At the same time, don't pat people on the back and say we'll get through this. We need to model a range of different experiences and allow all of them to coexist and to be in the room as they need to be. There are students with far greater hardships currently and those who are in more fortunate circumstances. Some of the stressors that are at play are controllable, but others are not. And that can be really challenging. As educators and caring staff members, you won't be able to take away the stressors your students feel, but you can help to minimize their impact or remind students about their strengths, supports, and strategies that can help them as they move through this. And above all else, by including and welcoming intentionally students into a place of relationship and connection where they see themselves in their classroom on a daily basis, by focusing on well-being and mental health in your classroom from the beginning, you are setting your students up for a much better success in their learning process and in their learning landscape. So let's move on to the ABCs of the mentally healthy return. So the A, B's, and C's: acknowledge, bridge, and connect. We need to acknowledge this is new for all of us. We've never been in this situation, and we're all finding our way. We're all learning how to deal with uncertainty, and we have questions, but we are in this together. We need to acknowledge the situation within which we exist. The B is bridging our relationships across our different learning environments, remote, traditional, with our community partners, with our parents. There are going to be many different ways, and we need to figure out how to bridge those so that there is access and opportunities for all. And connect easily. We need to know that some of our students will connect and others will need more active support around reconnecting and feeling safe, included, and engaged at school. Acknowledge, bridge, connect. Acknowledging our current situation is very important because it helps to recognize that students are not alone and that we're all in this together. And the same goes for parents. As educators, you're being asked to teach in a very different way, and all you can do is your best, and you've got this. But be kind to yourself and ensure that you maintain a flexible mindset and realistic expectations. As educators, the B of the ABCs, the bridge, you're not starting new. You've done this before, but you can leverage your relationship building skills for establishing caring connections. Lean on the strengths you've had, on successes you've had. Even in the return to school this year, feeling new and uncomfortable, you do have strengths and you can build on previous successes. For students and parents or caregivers, bridging will help with reintroducing routines and providing some degree of predictability, as well as offering social and emotional connections rooted in the power of the teacher-student relationship. Explicitly acknowledge and give people time and space to reflect. In this time of uncertainty and physical distancing, it is so important to feel part of something familiar, like a school or a class. If a student is struggling with a mental health problem and needs help, a connection to a professional mental health support can be a critical link and one that you're able to facilitate. Building a sense of classroom community, virtually or in person, may bring new awareness to issues of equity and inclusion, and you may be able to deepen your practice in this area. Connecting deeply with your students may help to ground you during this difficult time, reminding you of your many talents and strengths. And just a quick word on the DEFs. The DEFs are developing strengths, engaging supports, and focusing on strategies. Harness individual and class strengths, build on them, expand on them, highlight them, and remind students all the time of their skills, qualities, identities, and positive spirit and optimism. Engage, supports, and remind students to look for helpers. They're everywhere. Guide students to personal and community resources. And focus on strategies that can help with positive coping. Again, these are the big pictures, and there will be clear strategies on how this can be done in the context of this slideshow. So let's look now at some strategies that you can embed throughout the day. It's important to know that doing these activities can be quick and it can be so powerful. So figuring out ways to use them in your classroom, regardless of whether it's science, math, English, or health, is a great way to ensure that we're continuing to build the well-being of our students down at that first tier like we looked at earlier today, and building wellness for all. There are so many strategies that our students can learn, and helping them to do that and modeling using it on a regular basis and even modeling it in the moment is really a helpful way and an opportunity for us as educators to build these important strategies into the daily lives of our students. These strategies can help them in life now, navigating our current stresses and beyond, and it will also help them when things go back to quote unquote normal. We're going to try many of these today together so you can not only really understand what they are, but you can see how easy they are to utilize and implement. And these can be done in person or virtually. We're going to look at breathing strategies, muscle relaxation strategies, distraction, visualization, noticing, and thought changing strategies. It'll work differently for everybody, and you'll each have something you maybe feel more comfortable with, and that's okay. You don't have to do everything, but doing something is making a huge impact, and it's a really important thing that you can embed into your day for all ages. So, one of the strategies we can really work at is breathing strategies. Oftentimes, when we're feeling anxious or we're just struggling with something, we tend to speed up our breathing. It gets more rapid. And when that happens, we get less oxygen and we tend to breathe fast, even faster. And this can create a real cycle that mimics anxiety. So it's really important that we practice breathing strategies, whether it's just taking deep breaths at regular intervals or whether it's practicing some of these strategies like the one we're going to work on today. I will be providing you with other strategies and tools that you can use visually, walk through with your class in a lesson format, and also some video options in your package at the end. Let's try this four square breathing together. As you can see from the visual, you're breathing in on the long end and then you're holding on the short ends. So you're breathing out on the right and you're breathing in on the left. Let's try it together. Hold, release. and breathe in. Hold, release, and hold, and breathe in. As you can see, this can be done visually. It can be done by just thinking about a square and following it with your eye. Actually, it's probably more of a rectangle because one side's longer. But either way, you kind of get the idea. It can be a very powerful strategy. The next example is a muscle relaxation strategy. By working to reduce muscle tension, we can change our experience of stress in the body. And during this exercise, students will be focusing on one muscle group at a time, contracting it, and then totally letting go of the muscle until it's loose and relaxed. The most important part of the exercise is noticing the difference between the feeling of tension and relaxation. If you sense that students are on edge, you can walk them through something like this. Or you can choose to just do this at regular intervals or at a certain time every day so that it becomes a part of your classroom practice. So for instance, if you're working them through their body, you might say for your neck, push your shoulders up. Why don't you guys try it? Push your shoulders up to your ears as if you were hiding inside a turtle shell. And hold that for 3 seconds. Really tight, hide away. And then let it go and relax slowly for 3 seconds. Try that again. Rise up your shoulders to your ears. Hold them up there real tight and snug. 1, 2, 3. Let it go. Breathe out. Relax. And you can do that with other parts of your body. Let's try it with our hands. I want you to squeeze your hands together really tight into a fist as if you're trying to juice a bunch of lemons. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Now slowly let it go and relax it for 3 seconds. Now squeeze it again. You're doing those lemons again. And let go. You can see how you can even feel, at least I can, that relaxation kind of moving. And you can do that with all parts of your body. Distraction strategies. Sometimes students are feeling unsettled or having difficult emotions and they aren't ready to learn. And it's okay to suggest that they find something else to do for a while and then return to the school task once they're feeling better. When students intentionally put their focus on something other than what they are worried about, like a repetitive, mentally absorbing, or expressive activity, they can shift their focus and soothe their emotions. Puzzles, some exercise, a quick walk, creative art, all of these can be good distractions depending on the student's individual needs that can help students to settle and be better able to engage in learning. Visualization can also help students settle their minds by temporarily shifting focus away from worries and concerns. People often say it's like a mini vacation in your mind, but what you need to know is that your brain responds to your visualization as if it was really happening. So that's why it works. As you're visualizing the beach and all the things around it, the deeper you get into that visualization, the more your brain is responding as if it's at the beach. So you can let your brain literally go on a vacation by doing a visualization, and you will reap the benefits yourself. This is, again, a strategy you can suggest. You can present intentionally as something that you're going to do on a regular basis. You could have Tuesday visualization day, Monday muscle relaxation, etc. You can do it how you want within your classroom, but these are great skills, and they'll help you too, because when you're walking the students through them, you're working through them too. Let's do it together right now. I want you to close your eyes or look at the ground, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Just get yourself comfortable. I want you to picture in your head your favorite place. Your favorite place. Where are you? Look around. What do you smell when you're in your favorite place? What's around you? What sounds do you hear? What sensations do you feel? Do you feel your body touching something? Do you feel wind across your skin? How are you feeling as you're here in your favorite place? I want you to imagine as you're in your favorite place, all of your fears and worries being replaced with a feeling of calm and happiness. And just let yourself relax and enjoy this moment. Remember to breathe in a feeling of calm and happiness and breathe out your fears and worries. And then when you're ready, just come on back if you're not already back and just, notice how that changed your body and how that shifted you in some ways. So this might work again for some people, not for others, but it is a great strategy to know. Noticing strategies are important because in times of both chaos and pause, there's a value in helping your students to take the time to stop and notice the good things that are happening. Gratitude for the little things going well can be helpful. Noticing 3 good things that happened can really make a difference and orient somebody to a more positive outlook. Think about the student who got in trouble, say, a lot that day or that week. If our message to that child is that you got in trouble 4 times today, versus, I noticed you were really kind to Sally on the yard today. And I noticed that you picked up your garbage when you were finishing lunch and that you were sneezing into your arm in a really respectful way today. What are those 2 messages? Same day, 2 very different messages. And noticing strategies can really help kids to learn how to reframe things and not take on just the negative. It also can help settle anxious feelings and return students to present moment and not be perseverating on other things. So again, something that you can use. Here's another way that we can do noticing strategies that I'm going to do with you now. Again, just be comfortable. Now I want you to look around and in your mind, I want you to identify 5 things you can see. 5 things you can see around you. Now I want you to think of 4 things you can touch or feel with your body. Your chair on your back, your feet on the floor, etc. 4 things you can touch or feel with your body. Now think of 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell or taste, or even just think of 2 things you like to smell or taste. And now, 1 mindful, deep, slow breath in and out. That strategy is a great one. And as you will see in your packages, there are posters that could be printed for you that you can put up in your classroom that walk through that exact strategy. The final strategy we're going to talk about today, but by no means the last strategy available, is thought-changing strategies. How students perceive the stressors and circumstances that surround them will have a great bearing on them. So we can't always control everything that happens, and we need to be really conscious of how our thoughts are interacting with how we're feeling and what our actions are. For instance, when a student interprets events from a hopeful, positive stance, they're more likely to experience emotions associated with that hopeful, positive stance than if they engage in more pessimistic or negative thinking. As a staff member and caring adult, you can model this by example, looking for a silver lining in tough situations or showing self-kindness when you make a mistake and really modeling that and your own compassion to yourself. There are a series of social emotional videos for the classroom that have been created by School Mental Health Ontario, and they are excellent sources that you can play. They're made by the Youth Council for School Mental Health Ontario, and they're very short, but they're very explicit to the skill that they're trying to teach, and they can be a great way to engage students in the classroom, Perhaps you want to give a group of students each a different skill and they talk about it and present back to it and give examples. There's lots of ways you can be creative, and you guys are way better at that than me. So let's look for a minute at some of these videos, just to give you an idea of what's out there. Students often experience a range of emotions over the course of their day. They may feel happy, sad, angry, frustrated, a number of emotions and combinations of emotions. Students, and especially younger students, may struggle to identify and even appropriately express their feelings. This is not by no means only just for younger children, though. Learning to recognize different emotions and to manage them and appropriately manage them can help students function and interact more effectively of all ages. When students understand the impact of the thoughts and emotions that they have on their behavior, then they can maybe work to improve the quality of their interactions. This video that you will find in your package that's available online and easily accessible is a great example of how you can talk about this with students. Stress management and coping, this video talks about how every day students are exposed to big and small challenges that can contribute to feelings of stress. As they learn stress management and coping skills, they come to recognize that stress is a part of life and that it can be managed. We can learn ways to respond to challenges that enable us to look at them in different ways and find places where we are able to build some skills to cope. It's important to always do this with a lens of understanding the deep issues and equity concerns and systemic nature of racism that exists, and make sure that we don't overlay this in a broader way, and that this is really about specific things. So if you're feeling stressed about the math test, how can we help you, etc. We want to avoid saying, it's okay, you can do this, you can just bounce back in life, because it can tend to minimize experiences for our racialized and underprivileged populations, and we need to be very careful about not doing that. Persevering even when things get tough, or positive motivation and perseverance, is a skill that helps students take the long view and remain hopeful even despite their personal or immediate circumstances being difficult. With regular use, practices, and habits of the mind that promote positive motivation help students approach challenges in life with an optimistic and positive mindset, and an understanding that there is struggle in most successes and that repeated effort can lead to success. This needs to be understood within the context, however, of systemic oppression and systemic racism, and the barriers that many of our students face from a long-standing stance, and should never be confused with, oh, come on, you can just get over with it, or just bounce back from all the troubles that you've had as an individual, as a family, or as a culture. What we're talking about is the little successes around things that are happening in your daily life that you can build some strategies around. They include noticing strengths and positive aspects of your experiences, reframing negative thoughts, expressing gratitude, practicing optimism, practicing perseverance, appreciating the value of your practice, of making mistakes, and of the learning process. So this video speaks to that. This video talks about the topic of healthy relationship skills. We know that when students interact in positive and meaningful ways with others, mutually respecting diversity of thought and expression, their sense of belonging within the school and community is enhanced. Learning healthy relationship skills helps students establish positive patterns of communication and inspires healthy cooperative relationships. These skills include the ability to understand and appreciate another person's perspective, to empathize with others, to listen, to be assertive, and to apply conflict resolution skills. Discovering What Makes You You is the video that was made and created by the youth around self-awareness and identity, because knowing who we are and having a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives enables us to function in the world as a self-aware individual. Our sense of identity enables us to make choices that support our well-being and allows us to connect with and have a sense of belonging in various cultural and social communities. Educators should note that for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students, the term sense of identity and belonging may also mean belonging to and identifying with a particular community or even a nation. Self awareness and identity skills help students explore who they are, their strengths, difficulties, preferences, interests, values, and ambitions, and how their social and cultural contexts have influenced them. For critical and creative thinking, the video talks about organizing your thoughts to help you focus. Critical and creative thinking skills enable us to make informed judgments and decisions on the basis of a clear and full understanding of ideas and situations and their implications in a variety of settings and contexts. Students learn to question, interpret, predict and analyze, synthesize, detect bias, and distinguish between alternatives. They can practice making connections, setting goals, creating plans, making and evaluating decisions, and analyzing and solving problems for which there may be no solution apparent. It's called Everyday Mental Health in the Classroom. There are card decks available in many schools that were given to your mental health reps last year and probably found in your libraries. And card decks can also be made for, I believe, under $20 at the Terry James Library through Request. The card decks have all the categories we have just talked about in terms of the themes, and they touch upon many different skills and activities to develop social emotional learning through self confidence, relationships, positive motivations, and more. You can also find them online, and they are very simple to print, to use, to project, and also to find in different categories, as you can see here on the screen. Here's a sample card around stress management and coping skills and around creating collaborative classroom rules. So, generally, it tells you the materials, the length of time, and the level. So, it looks like primary, junior, intermediate. I also have PDFs for you for both elementary and secondary social emotional classroom posters that go through a variety of different things and practices that you can use as posters in your restrooms. You can put them in classrooms. You can do all kinds of things with them. Um, there we worked on some of them. We worked on the just notice. If you'll notice the one on the far right, we did that as part of our strategies. We worked on a calm place, and we didn't do the just listen, but that's also a good one to do. So again, there's lots. The Thrive School Mental Health Student Reference Group, which is student trustees across Ontario, worked on a mental health literacy shareables, some of the ones you saw earlier, but also a set of resources to support the intersection of equity and mental health. These are a few examples that they came up with to help their peers. And it's really great that School Mental Health Ontario is providing opportunities for students to be leaders in this way with inclusion and allyship. Again, the PDFs for these, some of them are little gifts, some of them are small movies, will all be available for you at the end for integration into your classroom settings as you desire. Lots of different options there, and they can. And finally, we're going to talk about the first 10 days and beyond. This is a toolkit created through School Mental Health Ontario, which literally takes all the things we have talked about and puts it into 10 days worth of plans for you as a teacher. So if you're the type that would like it kind of there for you in a really clear and easy way, this is going to be a phenomenal resource. We're going to take a little bit of time to look over this resource in a few minutes, and I'm just going to take you through it briefly. And then we're going to do a little activity around how you see yourself integrating things into your classroom and what resources you feel would be really important. So let's just take a minute though and look at this 10-day planner for teachers. And be the PDFs will be. Imagine you're arriving in a new place, one that is familiar in some ways, but unusual and a little unsettling in other ways. A place that you both know and don't know. You're arriving with heavy bags, figuratively and literally, and you aren't sure that you can put down your actual bags just yet, because you aren't sure if you're safe or even if you're going to belong. How would you feel, and what things might you do to help? Well, one thing we know you can do, and one thing we know you do really well, and our survey results always show that there are students that speak to having a caring adult from our surveys at the Upper Grand School Board, is that you can continue to be a caring guide and a caring adult. You can help somebody find their way, help them with their luggage, and help them to get settled in. Even though you yourself may not feel completely confident or comfortable, your students will see you as the caring guide that you're endeavoring to be. By doing this, we provide a warm welcome, we allow time to talk, acquaint students with safety rules, engage in activities that are explicitly welcoming, and spend time with those who need more. Available. The toolkit for each of these activities is a lesson plan, and it'll include conversation starters, in-class virtual activities, suggestions for your physical environment, etc. Great tools in an easy-to-use format. And you can print them at your schools, or you can order them through Terry James. You could do it across 1 or 2 periods, and you need papers, pencils, sentence strips, chart paper. The day 2 of the Mentally Healthy Return to School Planner is co-creating classroom rules. It's defining what a classroom or virtual classroom feels like and looks like when it's safe. Building on the reflection and practices from day 1, you can begin to co-create classroom norms and expectations with your students. In contrast to rules, which are usually teacher and school generated, norms are an agreement among members of a classroom or school about how they will treat one another. They are different from public health rules, which are non-negotiable. Day 2 is designed to establish these classrooms environments as safe and inclusive by co-creating the norms for interactions throughout each learning day. And some ways to do this through focusing on empathy, inclusion, and community, some brainstorming activities. All of these are included in the document. Day 3 is looking at feeling unique and welcomed. In recent months, the pandemic has not only affected our sense of health and safety, but it has also amplified inequities and injustice in our society. Some experience more than others, and there have been many differences in experiences, oftentimes due to differences in the social determinants of health, such as income, language, and discrimination. We witnessed multiple instances of system racism, and particularly anti-Black racism, anti-Asian racism, and anti-Indigenous racism brought to the surface in painful realities. Many families and students that we serve, as well as community and staff members, have been deeply affected by this difficult time in our society, and we all have a role to play in addressing inequities, injustice, and oppressive practices. We need to give special attention to building a student's sense of identity and mattering as they return to school this fall. Classrooms where students' identities are valued have culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy at the heart of what they do. and they reflect our commitment moving forward. Day 4, we look at identifying and managing emotions. Emotion charades, what's my temperature? These are all examples and have direct links to the everyday mental health cards that we discussed earlier. The activities are there, the tools are there, everything you need, as well as ideas around discussion topics. Day 5, we're looking at stress management and coping. Again, utilizing some of the tools from our everyday mental health, such as deep breathing, tense and relax. With practice and support, we know students will learn ways to respond to challenges and to grow in the face of these obstacles. And as we return to school, there may be even more additional stressful circumstances and changes for all of us to navigate. So it's a good time to remind students about what coping skills they have and to maybe add a few additional ones to their toolkit. Day 6 in the planner talks about positive motivation and perseverance and includes a couple book ideas as well as some activities specific to that topic. They can help us in reframing situations so that students can see alternative explanations and interpretations and views when facing a circumstance that might be difficult to change, but they can reflect on it in a different way at times. At this time, when there are many things out of our control, there is strength in looking for positives so we don't find ourselves feeling overwhelmed by the strain and worry of the pandemic. Optimistic thinking and keeping a long view has been associated with better mental health outcomes, but it takes practice and it is not to be done in the absence of those true conversations and invitations to share our stories and be really truthful and present. So, this is not about painting everything with rose colored lenses. This is about a specific skill around thinking optimistically. Day 7 talks about healthy relationship skills and builds in lots of different ideas and activities you can do in your classroom to build on those skills. We know that when students develop these skills, especially when they're developing them together in the context of a classroom, it can contribute to a safe and caring environment for everybody, and that then helps them to learn. At this time, a lot of us are feeling tense and worried, and we may not always be at our best in our interactions with others. So, practicing skills such as listening, sharing, and collaborating at the beginning of this school year can set a positive tone for the coming weeks and also contribute to that feeling of a safe environment and welcome environment. We need to be generous with each other and overlook moments of irritability and frustration and help us to keep small things small. Day 8 is about self-awareness and identity. Again, there are videos linked to all of these in the planner, so you can utilize visuals as well. And as with the other sections, this section supports self-confidence and practicing self-confidence, which can assist students to value their uniqueness and to be comfortable expressing their opinion. A critical element of self confidence for students involves growing and learning to appreciate their identity. Knowing who you are and holding firm to the person you believe yourself to be, all in the face of life's challenges and choices, is a lifelong skill that can be something we begin to develop in childhood. And educators have a key role in helping to show students that they matter and that they can bring that value into the classroom. Day 9, we're looking at the executive function or the critical and creative thinking. Every day in classrooms, as educators are establishing routines, modeling positive social behavior, and developing and maintaining caring relationships to develop a student's executive functioning skills. These skills are the processes that help us to plan, focus, retain instruction, and multitask. And we know that they're further developed and enhanced through practice. So anything we can do to support student skill building in this area is going to enhance their overall well-being and ability to function within the classroom setting. And finally, on day 10, we look at your help toolkit. So how would you ask for help? Where would you go? Who could you talk to? You've introduced a lot of schools and you've set a positive tone by now. Perhaps even set a routine or a practice that you're going to use on a regular basis within your classroom beyond the 10 days. You may not be ready to approach the curriculum bang on as you normally would, or you may feel like students maybe need a little more time to be ready to learn. And some may be ready and others may not be ready to go and get to it. You can always reach back to this guide to explore or repeat activities in a class wide or more individualized manner. It can be helpful also to remind students about the ideas you introduced over these last 10 days if you've used this tool. You might suggest they create a toolkit of ideas and strategies that can help them to manage things during this time. They could create a physical or online kit where they list the coping strategies they like the best and can use when they feel certain particular ways. Or they could place journaling or drawing that they did to remind themselves of their strengths and identity. And again, figuring out ways to ask for support. There is a tool which is a booklet, which you will have a link to, which is Self Help 101, created by the youth group through School Mental Health Ontario. It's a little booklet. I had created hard copies of these for secondary schools for Mental Health Week last year, and I will be distributing them this year. And there is also a PDF available for all schools. Probably the earliest would be junior for that one, but it's a great little tool on how to ask for help, how to notice that you might need to talk to somebody, and it can be individualized for the resources that we have in our schools. But make sure kids know where they can go. Of course, they can go to you, but who else is available in their school? Make sure that they get introduced to and know who the child and youth counselor is. If they're in secondary and there's a social worker too, who the social worker is. All of these things will build on their sense of safety and belonging and ability and skills and foundation to move into learning in the richest way possible. So now you've been given a variety of tools, from things that you can embed, from strategies like breathing exercises and muscle relaxation activities that you can do in the classroom on any given moment or in a more intentional way. And you also have a map of your first 10 days. This can be done obviously in connection with the important work that you do for your kids around assessing their learning needs at this time and building their learning skills. But it's really important to remember that if they are not coming in with strong safety and being welcomed, and if we aren't spending the time on this as we're being asked to do, it will impact our students. If we are doing this, on the other hand, if we are following the direction to embed this into our classrooms every day, especially in the beginning, we are going to set the stage for our students to be far more successful. I will be sending out messages to all teachers for days 1 through 10 with a reminder of what the topic is for that day, as well as a summary of what the topic is for the next day, so that everybody can follow along with the first 10 days together. And together we can create an environment for our students that is safe, welcoming, and mentally healthy. And remember that we have to do this for ourselves as well as for our students. And tape. For the last segment here, we're going to walk you through how to make your plan. We're going to spend some time on developing a plan for you and your start to the school year. How are you going to champion and model mental health and well-being, and which tools that you found today are you going to utilize? And we're going to give you some time to organize your thoughts and plan a bit so that you're ready to implement these important activities into your daily classes. It's important to remember this will be a living document. As with everything else, we just have to wait and see, and we don't have all the answers. You're going to get to know your class and you might be moving in a different direction, but what we do know is that wellness and mental health awareness and tools and skills are going to be there, and they're going to be necessary. So regardless of who you find in your class or what your community looks like, figuring out the way to do this is really important. So let's have a starting point now and do this before we end. Now I just want you to take just a few minutes, either together if you're in person or just to self-reflection, and take note of, even jot down your 2 to 3 biggest concerns about coming back. Really focus in on 2 or 3 concerns. And then I also want you to take note of 2 or 3 things that you're really excited about. Now, for each concern provided, I want you to give yourself a coping strategy or something you can do or a tool that you can use to support yourself to be able to manage that concern in ways that are accessible to you. Because there's not always going to be answers to everything. What you can do is use your strategies to support yourself to move through some of the tougher things that are tough for you. And think about what you're going to do in general to take care of yourself. Exercise, is social valuable to you, or quiet and calm? Do you prefer to sort of, journal or play music, those kinds of creative outlets? Think about what fills your bucket so you can bring your best self to work every day. Now, I want you to take some solid amount of time and think about how you're going to ensure this important work is embedded in your daily practice. What tools that we went over today are you going to actually use? Look at your resource document and go through some of the resources and really sort of think about how you're going to access these. Take some time to identify how and when. Will you use the 10-day planner and, sort of have a setup already set for you, or will you embed things into it that to other tools in ways just on a day to day? What I want you to remember, though, is that just saying I want to do it is not quite enough. I need you to really schedule in and think about how you're going to intentionally bring this important work into the classroom. Um, so pause here and take a significant amount of time here, maybe 10 minutes, and really think about that piece. And then on final reflections, I want you to think about 2 things that you learned or maybe that you just understand differently from today's session. What's one thing also that you just feel passionate about around wellness and mental health? It doesn't have to be something specific to this particular session, but just in general. And think about anything that you'd like to learn more about, either to dive deeper into or a topic that wasn't even addressed that you'd really like to know more about. This presentation was really formatted and mandated from the ministry. So there were lots of other ways we could have gone. This is a real focus on classroom-based wellness. There is a bit.ly at the bottom of your screen, which you can copy down and put into your web browser. And that'll bring you to a location where you can let us know any other topics that you would like to know more about. I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. It's really important that we spend this time, although the ministry mandated this 2 hours. I hope you found it to be helpful and useful, and that you feel inspired to bring this work into your classrooms, because I know you guys have this. I know you've got it, as the experts said in the beginning of our session today. And I also know that you do a lot of this stuff every day, and it's really important to know that because it will allow you to make the connection between what you're doing and what it means to the kids in terms of teaching wellness. So go on out there, have a great start to the year, and I wish you all well and a safe and happy return. It gives you instructions on what to do. On the back, it also gives you conversation starters on the back of the card, on many cards, and it also gives you the evidence from which it was drawn so that you know that this work is really evidence-based to enhance and support wellness in your classroom for your students. So those resources, like I said, are available through Terry James if they're not already in your schools. And they're amazing. They have all kinds of things. We have them linked in some of the tools that we're going to go over today. And I would highly recommend utilizing those as you endeavor to follow our direction from the ministry to embed wellness in everything we do in the classroom as we return to school.